So, when you think of Cape Town, um, no, let's frame it a little bit differently. When you ask someone to tell you about Cape Town, 9 times out of 10, Table Mountain will come up within that list. Table Mountain is one of Cape Town's most popular tourist attractions. It's a staple in their skyline. Now, I've never been to uh, Table Mountain, and I only know the myths and legends that surround the slopes of the mountainscape. 𝙼𝚘𝚗𝚗 being one of them. So when stories of table the tablecloth started surfacing, I was a little bit confused because apparently the clouds that rest down on Table Mountain are world renowned for how they rest on top of the mountain and how they creep down on the slopes. They like almost form perfect to the mountain shape, like a silhouette of the mountain resting on the surface, kind of like a tablecloth. Hence the name, the tablecloth of Table Mountain, especially according to one website, fandom.com. And I was confused because I've been to Cape Town a few times. I've never been to Table Mountain, um, but I've been to Cape Town a few times. And I'll be honest, I didn't know we had a name for the clouds on Table Mountain. I didn't know that. Jan van Hunks was a Dutch pirate during the early 18th century, during the Dutch East India Trading Company days. So it says that he's a pirate, so I doubt that he was into legal trading and he was more into pillaging and stealing rather than like, hey, I'll buy and sell from you. So it says that he was a pirate and he was quite active during the 18th century. And he was very dutiful in his work. But the time came when he finally wanted to retire. So, after retiring, Jan van Hunks' hobbies included drinking rum, hiking up the slopes of Devil's Peak, known back then as the Windberg by settlers, and climbing up Table Mountain, and smoking, a lot of smoking. On on an unrelated note, apparently he had a sharp-tongued wife. That's all our sources say. All of them describe her as sharp-tongued, so I don't think she was very friendly or easy to talk to. And she may have hated Jan van Hunks's smoking habit, or maybe he was hiding it from her. I don't know, but often he took his smoking habit outside. And every day, Jan hiked up the mountain, according to our one source, in order to attain greater smoking pleasure and escape his wife's sharp tongue. He would ascend the slopes of the mountain where he would settle down on his favorite spot to enjoy his fumious habit. So, on a side note, the hike up to what we know now as Devil's Peak is 14 kilometers and can take up to 5 to 6 hours to reach the top of the peak. So, along with that whole smoking up that, fornicate over yonder, dude, because that is a lot of dedication and you can do that on your own. So on one particular day, I guess Jan really wanted to get away from his wife and maybe test out a new tobacco blend. So he went all the way up to Devil's Peak, to his favorite spot, when he comes to a stop and sees a mysterious person perched on his usual seat. The stranger was tall, lean, and cloaked in an unusual black garment because, of course, it's black. And seriously, up on those hills, you're in that heat. And most mysterious of all, the stranger was wearing a broad-rimmed hat with a high peak and shadows covering the stranger's face. The hat was a good choice. This stranger was perched on Devil's Peak, legs crossed, sitting straight up with a sly smile and greeting Jan by name. Now, Mynheer Van Hunks could have fought for his position. It had a great view of the sea, a spectacular place in the sun, and, of course, a world-class view of Table Mountain. So maybe he was apprehensive about sharing this space with this total stranger. He didn't want to be rude, but this was a sacred space after all. But when the stranger drew out his pipe, put it to his lips, and uttered the words that have and uttered the words that have and uttered the words that have been said in all dodgy nightclub bathrooms and most precarious of situations that melt all tensions and forge kinships of monumental feats. Got a light. Jan sat down, knees up, a match on his face, Aurelie putting out his matches. Hi, friend. Of course I have a light. And the two began talking, enjoying each other's company, puffing out fragrant clouds of spicy blended tobacco. The stranger asked for a puff of Van Hunks's pipe. Van Hunks was proud to pass his pipe over. It was his own blend that he'd made and mixed himself. The stranger was delighted by Jan Van Hunks's blend. The warm, spicy flavor, the woody smoke. The stranger could even note hints of rum and honey. Van Hunks, being a prolific smoker, wanted to sample the stranger's tobacco. The man in black passed it over, and Jan took a deep breath, inhaling the smoke deep into his lungs, and frowned. The taste was odd, like tar and soot, like it burned the plant. The smell was sweet, too sweet, and it did not match the taste at all. Jan was polite in handing the pipe back to the stranger, probably muttering, "Yeah, great, lekker, and all but drank down his own blend to get the taste out of his mouth. He probably had a sip of rum just to wash out that bitter, acidic feel at the back of his throat. The two talked and chatted about the blends when Jan boasted about his habit that he probably smoked so much it was a surprise that he was still alive. Quote, Van Hunks started to boast about his tobacco and the fact that he was the only man who was able to smoke a large quantity of it as he did. Like Blackbeard, he was inordinately proud of the smoke that he could inhale without getting sick. The stranger looked over to him, lifting his pipe to his mouth and speaking out with a cloud of that sulphuric smoke coiling from between his teeth as he said, I can smoke more than you. And I don't know if it's a me thing or maybe it's something in the South African air, but Jan Van Hunks looked at this man and said, can you? He was like, can you? Bet. Slamming down a large pile of tobacco between them, along with some matches and rum. The two stuffed their pipes, lit their blend, and smoke billowed into the air. Rings formed around them, plumes surrounded them, and billowed over the mountain top in a thick layer that was hard to see through. The smoke was so dense it created a cloud bank that coasted over Table Mountain, laying over and covering the mountain like a tablecloth. So because tablecloth was so popular and familiar, I did ask my family if they'd ever heard of it. My brother lives in Cape Town and he'd only ever heard of it after he moved there. I asked my dad and my Oma and everyone else in my family, and they'd heard of it. So maybe it's a Cape Townian thing. Maybe you only ever hear of it after you've been around for a while. So if you've heard of it before then, please let me know. But back to our story. The two smoked so much the clouds they created made wild stormy winds blow over. The gusts were so powerful the two hung onto the mountainside and still blew plumes and clouds into the air. The two were tired and feeling the smoke come from them, filling their lungs and pressing against their chests, but still they breathed in and blew out. A powerful gale from the southeast raged over the competitors and tore off the stranger's fashionable yet foreshadowingly black hat from his head and revealed horns curling out from his forehead. A forked tongue whipped out from sharp yellow teeth as the monster began to hack and cough, and Jan Van Hunks backed off that mountainside, clutching his pipes to his lips as he came face to face with a very unhappy devil. The devil who had stopped smoking. The devil who had just been beaten. Furious that he'd lost to a mortal, the devil yelled into the cloud bank. The storm they'd created with their smoke had surrounded them, and lightning flashed across the slopes and rumbled the peak upon where they battled. Lightning daggered across the sky and struck the ground where they stood, and the clouds hung low over the town below. And when the clouds cleared, there was nothing but scorched earth left behind. Since then, the clouds still gather upon the mountain. The strong winds that drift in from the southeast still lay the cloth over Table Mountain, and some say Jan Van Hunks was able to walk away, hacking and coughing, trembling from his fight with the devil. Some had never seen him return home from that fateful day, and say he is trapped, smoking with the stranger in black up on Devil's Peak, waiting to be released from the devil's hold. Maybe he battles, hoping the smoke will keep the devil away from the bustling Cape Town below, hoping the winds that are carried down from the slopes heal the Cape and all its people. I mean, they call the wind the Cape Doctor for a reason, right? They say the winds are strong enough to clear the air pollution and pestilence. Which might be true because the air is much better in Cape Town, but I've never heard of the Cape Doctor, and I'm starting to think that maybe I need to get outside more. Maybe Jan Van Hunks was not smoking tobacco and was instead partaking in the devil's lettuce, and that's why he had to hide from his wife. All we have left are the clouds that blanket over the slopes of Devil's Peak, and the stories shared between lights and smokes passed between friends as they make clouds of their own. To remember this fierce battle, we have the tablecloth blanketing over Cape Town's skyline, and a poem passed down from 1882 that maybe gives us an idea to what happened to the retired pirate. So I'll end it the same way. They've sliced the very crown from his head, worn worse tonsure than a monk's, lopped arms and legs, stuck in a red-hot tube, in his wretchedest of trunks. And when the devil wants his pipe, they bring him Jan Van Hunks. I don't know about you, but I learned a lot this episode. Maybe we'll do a special magic monsters and myths episode where we can go over the poem because it's 9 freaking pages, and I'm sure that Rossetti, who wrote the poem, knew more about the legend in 1882 than we did, with the science. But that is all for now. It is so good to be back. I have a lot of wonderful, magical tales, creepy monsters, and odd myths to share with you, and I can't wait to tell you more stories from around the world. I don't have an official outro yet, so for now, I'll just say goodbye, stay safe, and maybe sprinkle some salt under your bed. Bye!